Thanks, James. I'm going to go a bit analog, so I'm not going to use PowerPoint. Is that okay? So I'm just going to use flippy charts. How many of you find people fascinating? How many of you find people fascinating? How many of you find yourselves fascinating? Yeah? Are you a little bit amazed what goes on inside your head at times? Would that be fair? Are you a bit disgusted at what goes on inside your head? Human beings, we're complex, messy creatures. And there's some fascinating dynamics around the way that we as human beings do this thing called living. Statistically, in this room right now, statistically, at least 25% of you will be on some form of antidepressant. According to the pharmaceutical industry and the realities of how people feel in this country, we also find ourselves facing the fact that we have the second highest youth suicide rate in the world. How many of you would agree Australia is one of the great places on the planet? Would you agree? Do you notice the boats aren't leaving Australia? They're not leaving Australia. And yet we have this real prevalence of not only the symptoms of depression on an almost epidemic level, we have people with huge amounts of unhappiness, including stress, anxiety, and depression. What the hell is going on? And this is something we'd like to talk about today, is just to investigate, unpack, and start to ask some of the more profound questions that are really a fundamental touch point in all our lives, if not personally, at least by association, in our families and colleagues and friends. So rather than plunging into something that's going to be deeply, profoundly serious, and it is, we're also going to need to have a fairly contentious and provocative look at what we can start thinking about, and I love James's idea of think more, that can start to alleviate some of this in our lives and by extension to others. And to play with this, I'm going to ask you this question. There is one quality that you ask almost anybody that they would like to have more of. A quality that they sense in their lives. If I had more of this, I'd be happier. If I had more of this, I'd be more able to achieve the things I want to achieve. If I had more of this, I'd be bolder. I'd be braver. I would take more chances. And this one quality is something that we all aspire to have more. And some of us, of course, have it, but we often have it contextually. And this one quality that I'm referring to, of course, is the quality of confidence. Now, confidence is an interesting human experience. Now, how many of you find yourselves contextually confident? In this situation, I'm really confident, but in that situation, I'm not. Would that be true for you? Yeah? So, for example, where, for most of you, are you most relaxed and confident in your lives? Where would that be for most of us? This is the interactive bit, right? So, that would be at home, okay? How many of you walk into your lounge rooms like this? Hi. Take a seat. Just going to watch some telly. No, we don't, obviously, right? But you'll walk into meetings like this, or you'll meet someone in your organization, or someone sort of senior, and you might find yourself getting into that sort of self-conscious state, almost like you reduce yourself. There's a diminishment that goes on. So how come in that situation I'm confident, and yet in this situation I'm not? And we'll have a narrative. We'll have a whole story around that. Oh, I need to know my content better. I'm lacking experience. And yet some of the most confident people I ever encounter are about this high, about 4- and 5-year-olds. Have you noticed this? I mean, watching a 5-year-old walk into a room is just amazing, because they just walk in, don't they? They're sort of like, hi, none of you walked in there this morning. You didn't all go and go, hello, right? No, hi, I'm a very serious, important person. Nice to meet you. So what do you do? Like I care. So you've got all of this going on, right? So what is this thing around confidence? But here's the question. What is confidence? Now, we think about this as a quantifiable amount, as if you've got a reservoir of confidence somewhere in your body, and you'll say things like, oh, I'm losing confidence, like it's leaking out, or I'm feeling full of confidence, right? Or I'd like to have more confidence, as if it is a thing, an entity. But we all know that confidence is nothing more than what? It's a mindset. It's a feeling. So confidence is nothing more than a feeling. How many of you sometimes find in social contexts that you can acquire confidence through chemical inspiration? Ever been in these situations? I just need 3 Chardonnays, then I'm ready. I mean, so you alter your biochemistry, now I can dance, all right? So there's something about this notion of confidence. And it's to do with this notion of feeling, right? So I'm feeling something. Now, a feeling, of course, is just an emotional state. And at every moment of every day, you are in a state of emotion. You're feeling something. So who's responsible for your emotional state? Are you? So you're responsible for your emotional state. If so, then why are you not walking on the cutting edge of bliss on a permanent basis? Why don't you wake up every morning and go, today I will dabble in the shallow end of ecstasy? No, you don't, because you are constantly at the volition or the input of stuff around you, people, places, and things. So what is occurring here in this notion of accessing confidence as a thought form is this idea of being able to access our emotional state and take some mastery over it. And this is really what I'd like to have a chat about. So in the short time that we have, I'm going to, a couple of ideas I want to play with around this notion of feeling. And at the same time, I'm going to be deliberately provocative. I'll say some things that you might take umbrage at. You might go, oh, here we go, bloody South Africans. They're all arrogant dickheads. They don't make me laugh, monkey man. Okay, I understand that. I've been in Australia since 1983, so it's been a while. But every time people hear my accent, they make assumptions. So, by the way, who's got a well-calibrated, very finely tuned internal dickhead index? Who's got one of those? You can meet someone like in 3 seconds, dickhead. It doesn't take long, does it? Oh, tick, 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 bitch. All right, so that's kind of interesting. All right, so let's have a chat about this. Now, I would like to introduce you to a character. Now, this is a metaphor. Right? It's a metaphor. This is not a literal representation of anybody here in the room or anybody you may know. It's just a metaphoric construct of how we as human beings function. So, so here we have a character. All right, so, and this person, I don't know, we know what age he is, but let's say he's not as happy as he could be. And there might be reasons for that. We're not sure what they might be. But there's a sense of this guy not feeling at the top of his game. All right. So here he is. Let's say his name is, give me a name. Fred. All right. So here's Fred. Now, Fred is not anorexically challenged. You might have picked that up. All right. Now, so Fred's in a state. Now, this is not about size. It's not about weight or anything. It's how this person feels about himself. Fred's construct around himself as a human being. Now, we all have this metaphorically somewhere in our lives. We're not happy with a certain state. It might be a relationship, it might be your career, it might be some issues in your family, it might be your own health and well-being, it might be your financial status right now, or even your professional status. You'll have a bunch of things that cause you right now to think, this is not as good as it could be. So what we have is a teleological orientation. Teleology is a fancy way of saying goals. All right, so I have a goal that I want to strive for myself. And by the way, who suffers from terminal uniqueness? Do you know people who suffer from terminal uniqueness? I am so special. Well, you know what? We all have exactly the same sort of goals. We have goals around what we want in our lives is to have a career that's worth doing and feel proud of. We want relationships that are loving and supportive, and we generally want to leave a legacy of some values. It's more or less around those basic things, and we want to have a life of health and well-being. Right? You've got variations on that, and you can put some scale indicators in terms of how much, etc. But that's essentially the goals. So here's Fred. So he goes goals. Right? So I need to create some goals in my life. So I'm not happy with this. So what I want to do is to create something where I'm feeling a lot happier. So he can see himself in the future, and he is looking a lot better. He's even gone to one of those hair places, and he's done the work. He's got the whole thing happening. He's looking good. He's got it's a bit Mardi Gras, but you're with me. So, all right. So he creates himself a goal around what he thinks he ought to be or should be, and so on. So this is what we tend to do, right? We create what's called an idealized future self. If only we could have this, then I will be happy conversation. So in this idea, so this becomes his goal, all right, this becomes his aspiration, and he'll think about it. He'll create an internal construct, and he'll put all sorts of associations of what this might mean. Oh, well, I'll be healthier and happier. I mean, right now I'm not the spunk rat that I used to be, etc. He looks at stairs and he collapses a bit. He can't even tie his shoelaces without panting. So he sees a higher quality of life. And Fred, like all of us, goes, I'm going to go for that. And we all set this as an intention, teleologically oriented. And we start saying, well, I know what to do. You know what Fred does, of course. He joins Fitness First. He buys the alarm clock. He gets the new running shoes. He gets the pedometer, 10,000 steps, even a heart rate monitor. Let's go big. All right. He wakes up at 5:30. He's up and he's ready. And he's off to the gym. He walks. Hello. He gets onto the treadie and then picks up a few weights, and then gets to work. But this lasts for a little bit, correct? It lasts for a while. Might be a week, 2 weeks. Haven't been here. And then slowly what starts to occur is that the energy that he had, the drive that was in place, the aspiration that was being driven there, suddenly starts to lose juice. It starts to fade. All right, and how long does it take before people start to go back to old patterns of behavior? Who's been guilty of this? Right, you all know what I'm talking about. And it might be week 4 when suddenly the alarm clock goes off, and inside the voice in his head goes, you deserve a sleep in. You've done so well until now. And Macca's for breakfast. It's that quick, right? So what happens, right? So what happens? And by the way, here's the deeper question, right? Here is Fred. Who's responsible for Fred's condition? Is he? Right? He obviously has got an energy issue, too much in, not enough out. That might be a bit of a clue, right? But what's the backstory here, right? What has been the conditions that have created and led to this guy being in this state with that aspiration? And all of us in this room, we're not alone. We all have a Fred aspect to ourselves. And you might be thinking, I'm losing confidence because of this. And then he has a narrative that starts to support this, and then he'll start justifying. And before you know it, he can find himself back, just spreading onto the couch, watching television, eating pizza, and going back to old patterns of behavior. We all do it. Now, you'd think that we'd all be the embodiment of perfection and health. I mean, do we have a content problem in our world? I mean, do we know how to be healthy? Go to any bookstore. There was a wonderful book by the CSIRO called The Wellbeing Diet. I don't know if you ever came across it. Bestseller. Absolutely brilliant book. Sold squillions of them. So I had to go and find out what the secret of this book was. So I went into the bookstore, I plucked it out, opened it up, and here's what they had to say. You won't believe this. Eat less and exercise more. I was shocked, right? It's the same crap. Everyone knows what to do. So what on earth is getting in the way? What's impeding and what's restricting? What's causing us to go into positions of decay where we feel our confidence is being diminished? You know those carpenters, they have these, what are they called? Those, they skim the wood thing, like a carpenter plane. You know those? Now, tell me if you had not had this experience. You go to work and your manager says something a bit cutting to you at a meeting. And there goes just another little sliver of your self-esteem. There goes a little bit of your confidence. Someone's a bit rude to you. All right? You put an idea on, it just gets ignored. You send off an email, no reply. All right? How many of you find it? How many of you sit in meetings and going, oh, I better say something. I'm going to bloody say something. And then the voice in your head goes, oh, you better not. It'll be a career-limiting move, right? And you go, I better shut up. And then you're driving home that night, and you run the video of yourself in that meeting, saying what you wanted to really say. You should have bloody... You've just taken another layer off, right? How many of you have seen people arrive at workplaces full of energy, vitality, and just go for it, and it's stuff, and within months, you just see them slowly starting to decay. And it often starts on day one when someone goes, you must be new. Wait for a few months, you'll know what it's like to really work here, right? Right? All that toxic shit that goes, all that toxic stuff that goes on. Did I say shit? Sorry, I don't mean to swear. I did. All right, so what is that? All right, where is that coming from? And what causes people to assimilate that is that's okay in their lives. So what we got to ask ourselves is this. How do we manage what's occurring in our brains that can construct feelings that lead to feelings of a dissembling of confidence? And the suggestion is that we've got to manage our internal dialogue. And it's this notion of negative self-talk. Now, negative self-talk. Now, who's got a committee in their heads? Anyone? All right? Without a chairperson, right? Who has competing voices in your head? And they're not even yours sometimes, right? There's some disembodied voice, or your parents, something, right? There's these voices in your head. Now, if we can start to manage our internal dialogue, once we can start to take control of this, the suggestion is that our capacity to make conscious choices and support ourselves in the attainment of the goals that we aspire to becomes more and more within our grasp. Why is it that 80% of people that set goals fail? Every study starts to back this up. Stephanie Burns, working with the University of Adelaide, with supported studies of students who are counseled and supported in their goal attainment, still 80% of them fail. So the suggestion is managing your negative self-talk. 4 steps. First, you've got to identify your negative self-talk. Most of your negative self-talk has been externally acquired. Secondly, you've got to objectify it. It's not you. Thirdly, you've got to be able to manage it. You've got to have this negotiation, and over time, you can banish it. And the suggestion is you turn it into an object. So when you hear this voice, in your brain, imagine that it's something like this. It's like this thing that's sitting on your shoulder, yabbering away. All right, it's just non-stop yabber, chat. Who's your worst critic, by the way? Who's your worst critic? Yourself. I mean, you say things to yourself that if other people said them, you'd sue. So what we suggest is this, that your internal dialogue is nothing more than like a lizard on the shoulder that's just going, oh, you better not, career limiting, who the hell do you think you are, don't take a chance, stay, thank you for sharing, and shut up is the strategy, or LMS, lizard management strategies. So these lizards come in many different guises and forms. We'll have lizards around how we feel about ourselves, and basically even physically. I mean, our society is obsessed with how you look, obsessed. I hate those lizard magazines. Have you seen them? They're called New Weekly and New Idea. Have you come across these? And I'll have photographs of the celebrity du jour wrapped in some fabric by some designer, and here's this emaciated creature with a smile stuck on their faces with only 2 words in their head, I'm hungry, because they haven't eaten for bloody 3 weeks, all right? And we think, and we rate them out of 10 for what they wore. Who cares? Right? But people go, oh, I must look like that. Why? All right, this is lizard shit. All right, yeah. And then you got this thing. Have you seen this ad? Men, and get your confidence back with Ashley and Martin. Like, if you're not sprouting follicles from your cranium, somehow you should feel reduced in your mind. What bullshit is this, right? This is lizard. Sorry, I'm getting carried away. But this is lizard stuff. The rise of cosmetic surgery is all lizard. If you can get stuff sucked in, sucked out. You can get your face frozen. You know what men can get? I mean, what the hell's going on inside your head when you have this thought? If only I had bigger calves, right? Men get silicone bags put behind their... What, do you walk around with shorts? Hello, check these. I mean, well, now I get the this is the nonsense of lizard management. We'll have this around our own sense of self in every context of our lives. And the idea here is that lizards have been externally imposed. They've been imposed by parents, by your culture, by your religion, by your socialization, by media, by advertising. And this diminishment here is the greatest insult to yourself and to each other. The passenger liner hits the proverbial iceberg, starts to sink. Who do we save first, traditionally? Women and children. Question: why do we save the children? They're useless, right? They've got no skills. Right? They're going to be a burden. They're going to whinge and bitch and moan. You can always get more kids. It's not that hard. Right? So why do we save the children? Right? Now I know what you're going to say. Oh, they're the future. Well, not yet. I mean, they just flesh-colored digestive systems mostly. Right? So that's what they are. Right? But you know what? We have enduring and utter total love and respect for children. I defy anyone not to hold a small baby in their arms and see the embodiment of pure potential and love. Agreed? Now, what has that child done to deserve any of that? They've got no qualifications. They're not adding any value. They're not even contributing to the household. They just squeal when they have a need. But we see the embodiment of pure potential and love. At what point in our lives do we go, now you must earn it? All right, so the people at your table, when you met them, did you go, quick calibration, I wonder where they're from, what's their financial status, or what position? Oh, that's seriously important. Hello, here's my card. Or did you not see the embodiment of pure potential and love? I don't think so. Why not? Right? Why not? Well, because we've been conditioned by this lizard shit. Right? This is the stuff that becomes hierarchical and power games. This is the area that we have the cultivation of that most insidious quality or aspect in our lives that seems to rule everything. It's fear. And this notion of fear is so palpable. And in Australia, I weep when I read some of the political nonsense that goes on in the way that they try and leverage fear in our culture. We live in one of the great places on this planet, and yet there's still so much fear around. Where does this come from? The suggestion is that the manifestation of our own internal dialogue that has been programmed into us in our early formative years has resulted in this capacity, our lack of capacity to relish and glorify, not glorify in an arrogant way, but just to recognize the wonder of us as human beings. And when we start to have this as a notion in ourselves, can you imagine the pervasive effect in how we perceive and experience others? That's the challenge. So I invite you to consult your lizards. I'll ask you to think about what it is, the internal dialogue, and what you say to yourself on a daily basis. And remember, confidence is just nothing more than a feeling. And the more you realize that we are all the same. There's no one better than you, there's no one less than you. And here's one of the greatest truths. And I only learned, I'm 55 now, so it took me to my mid-30s to work this out. No one anywhere really knows what the hell is going on We're all just making this up, right? How do we make it up with style, with intelligence, and with grace? And how do we manage those lizards more effectively? You know, Stephen gave us a really optimistic view of what's going to be happening in 2014 in regards to the economy, but also the great country that we live in. Why is it that Melbourne and Sydney and the other cities in Australia are regularly on the top 4 or 5 of the best cities in the world? Why is Australia always in the top 10 of one of the happiest countries on the planet? Right? Why do we not grasp that and celebrate this? And as a migrant myself, I can see it. And when Anders talked about Digilog and the reality that I have a friend who's got a 3-year-old daughter who went to a hotel room, walked up to the window and started to swipe the window and wondered why the background wasn't changing. You know, how do we start to change, alter that world? And how do we bring in the innovation that James talked about so that we can create a world that transcends the limitations that we constantly and regularly put on ourselves, imposed by externals, that when we realize the internal reality of what we can and could achieve, I wonder what lies before us. Thank you for coming today.